The day my sister's wedding invitation arrived in the mail, I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it had my name spelled wrong. 28 years of being her sister, and she spelled my name wrong on the invitation. Kitten, with a K and a Y and an E. She wrote Kitten. I stood there at the kitchen counter of my apartment, holding that thick cream envelope with the gold foil embossing, and I thought, this is exactly who she is. This is exactly who she has always been. I went anyway. I drove 6 hours from Columbus to my parents' house in Savannah 3 days before the wedding, because my mother called me crying, saying the florist had double booked and someone needed to fix it, and the caterer was threatening to pull out, and my father's back was acting up again. I came because that is what I do. I have always been the one who comes. My sister Naomi, 2 years older than me, the one who my parents called the responsible one, even though I cannot tell you a single time she was actually responsible for anything, had been living with my parents for the past 18 months after her first engagement fell apart. In that time, she had contributed to the household by renting the apartment above the garage to a couple of her friends at below market rate, and by redecorating the guest bathroom without asking anyone, and by spending what I would later learn was a significant portion of my parents' retirement savings on the wedding that I was now driving 6 hours to help rescue. I did not know that last part yet. That part came later. What I knew, when I pulled into my parents' driveway at just past 9 on a Thursday night, was that the house smelled like something was burning, that my mother was on the phone in the kitchen crying in that particular quiet way she has, and that my father was sitting in his recliner watching a baseball game with the volume up so high he couldn't hear anything else. I had learned over the years to recognize what kind of situation I was walking into by the smell and the volume of the television. This was bad. I found my sister on the back porch, feet up on the railing, glass of white wine in hand, scrolling through her phone. "Hey," she said without looking up, "Mom said you were coming." "Yeah," I said. "The florist issue, what exactly happened?" She shrugged. "I gave them a deposit. They booked someone else for Saturday. Whatever, I'm sure you'll figure it out." I want to be very clear about something. In that moment I did not say what I was thinking. I did not say, "You gave them a deposit and then what, forgot to follow up for 4 months?" I did not say, "You have been living here for a year and a half doing nothing and this is your one job." I did not say any of those things. I went inside, made myself a cup of tea, opened my laptop and started calling florists. By midnight I had found one. More expensive, fewer options, but they could do it. I booked it on my credit card, $2,200, and told myself I'd work out the reimbursement later. The next 2 days were like that. I fixed the seating chart because Naomi had put 2 cousins who haven't spoken in 11 years at the same table. I called the caterer and spent 40 minutes on the phone negotiating the vegetarian entree count. I picked up the wedding favors, little personalized honey jars, which were actually really sweet, from a woman on the other side of town. I steamed the bridesmaids' dresses. I coordinated with the venue about parking. I did all of this while my sister attended her bachelorette brunch, got a facial and had a mani-pedi. Her fiancé Darren seemed like a fine enough person, quiet, kind of checked out, laughed at the right moments. He worked in commercial real estate. He and my sister had met at a bar 2 years ago and moved very fast. I had met him 4 times before this trip. My mother adored him, mostly because he drove a nice truck and opened doors. The night before the wedding, my mother pulled me aside in the hallway outside the linen closet and held both my hands and said, "I don't know what we would do without you, sweetheart." She had tears in her eyes and everything. "It's fine, Mom," I said. "You're so good at all of this," she said. "You were always the capable one, the capable one." I have been the capable one my entire life. Naomi was the pretty one, I was the capable one. Naomi got the bedroom with the window seat. I got the bigger closet because I was, quote, more organized. Naomi got a car for her 18th birthday. I got a card that said, "We know you'll figure it out, you always do." I figured it out. I got a job at a coffee shop and saved up and bought a used Honda Civic and I drove myself to college. I did figure it out, I always do. The wedding was on a Saturday in late April. It was beautiful, genuinely, white and gold and orchids everywhere, a string quartet, a venue on the water. I sat in the 3rd row and watched my sister walk down the aisle in a dress I had personally steamed at 10:30 the previous night, and she was glowing, and I clapped and I was happy for her. I was. The reception was fine, dinner was good. I gave a toast I had written on the plane, something warm and true about how Naomi had always known how to find the best in a room, which is accurate. She is genuinely gifted at that. People laughed at the right parts. Darren's mother hugged me afterward and said it was the best toast she'd heard in years. The part where everything changed happened at the dessert table at approximately 9:15. I had been looking for my mother to tell her I was going to head back to the hotel soon, because I had a 6-hour drive home in the morning. I found her near the entrance of the venue in a conversation with my father and my aunt, my mother's sister Claudette, who had flown in from Portland. Claudette is the kind of woman who says exactly what she thinks and has never once in her life moderated herself on account of an audience. I love her for this, even when it is inconvenient. I came around the corner just in time to hear my father say, quite clearly, "We can't keep letting her bail us out every time something comes up. It sets a bad precedent." I stopped. "She doesn't mind," my mother said. "You know how she is. She just handles things." "The florist bill alone," my father said and shook his head. "I'll pay her back," my mother said, and she said it in the way people say things they have no intention of doing. Claudette said nothing. She was looking at her champagne glass. I stood there for what was probably 3 seconds and felt something very cold move through my chest. Not anger. Not exactly. More like something settling into place, a thing I had known for a long time without quite letting myself know it. I paid for the florist. I spent 2 full days of my time. I drove 12 hours round trip. I was the capable one. Nobody was ever going to pay me back. I went back to the hotel. I lay in the dark with my phone face down on my chest and stared at the ceiling for a long time. I thought about the $2,200 on my credit card. I thought about the last time my parents had called me, 2 months ago when their furnace needed replacing. I had recommended a contractor and helped them find a financing option. My father had later mentioned to someone else that Kitten handled the whole thing, as if handling things were a personality trait and not a form of labor. I thought about the fact that I have a grandmother, my father's mother. Her name is Vivian, and she is 81 years old, and she lives in a house outside of Asheville that she has owned since 1987, and she is the sharpest person I have ever met in my life. She taught high school English for 30 years and then spent 15 years as a legal advocate for tenants' rights, and she can tell you, at any given moment, exactly what something is worth and exactly what it is not worth. She calls me every Sunday. She has never once called my sister. I had not told Vivian about the florist or the 2 days or the credit card, because Vivian would have had something to say about it, and I had not been ready to hear it. Lying in that hotel room, I thought, maybe I should have let her say it. I drove home on Sunday. On Tuesday, my mother texted me to say the wedding photos from the photographer's preview were just gorgeous, and to ask if I had received the honey jar favor because she didn't see me take one. I texted back that yes, I had one. It was great. She sent a heart emoji. She did not mention the florist bill. I waited. I know, but I waited because I am always the one who waits, and I thought, maybe this time. 6 weeks passed, nothing. Then, on a Wednesday evening in early June, my mother called me. I was making dinner. I let it go to voicemail, which I never do, and then I felt guilty and called her back. "Sweetheart," she said, and I knew immediately from the way she said that word that something was coming. "We have a little situation." The situation was this. My parents had taken out a home equity loan 18 months ago to help fund Naomi's wedding, a significant portion of it. The total Naomi had spent was, according to my mother's carefully vague phrasing, more than we expected. They had told no one. The wedding was done. The loan payments were starting. My father's hours at work had been reduced. He was 63 and working part-time at a medical supply company, which I also had not known. They were going to be short, not a little short, considerably short. My mother was wondering if I might be able to help bridge the gap for a couple of months while they figured things out. I sat down on my kitchen floor. I don't know why the floor. I was standing at the stove, and then I was on the floor, with my back against the cabinet and my feet flat on the tile and the phone pressed to my ear. "How much is the loan payment?" I asked. My mother said a number. I won't repeat it here, but it was not a bridging the gap number. It was a second income number. A restructure your life number. "And Naomi?" I said. There was a pause. "Naomi and Darren are just getting started," my mother said. "They have their own expenses." I asked when they had taken out the loan. My mother told me. I asked if Naomi knew the loan existed. Another pause, longer this time. "She knows we helped," my mother said. Does she know how much? Sila mom, we didn't want her to feel, we didn't want it to be a burden on her. I think what I felt in that moment was something past anger. Anger has heat. This was cold and very clear and very still. I said, I need to think about this, and my mother said, of course, take your time, and I hung up and sat on my kitchen floor for another 10 minutes. Then I called Vivienne. She picked up on the second ring, even though it was past 8 on a Wednesday, because Vivienne is always awake and always picks up. Hi Bug, she said. She has called me Bug since I was 4 years old, and I have never successfully explained to anyone else why this is a term of endearment. Grandma, I said, I need to tell you some things. I told her all of it, the florist, the 2 days, the credit card, the wedding favor I had to remind my own mother I'd taken, the 6 weeks of silence, the phone call tonight, the number, the loan, the pause before my mother said Naomi knew they had helped. Vivienne was quiet while I talked. She didn't say, or I see, or any of the filler sounds people make to let you know they're still there. She just listened. This is one of the things about Vivienne. She listens like she's taking notes. When I finished, she said, have they ever paid you back for anything? I thought about it. No, I said. Has anyone ever once discussed what your time is worth? No. And if you said no, if you told your mother no, you cannot help right now, what do you believe would happen? I thought about that too. The careful answer, the one I would have given 3 hours ago, was, they would be disappointed and find another solution. The answer I gave Vivian was, they would be shocked, genuinely. Like it would not compute. Yes, Vivian said. Because to them your no is not a real option. You've never offered it, so they don't believe it exists. We talked for almost an hour. At the end of it, Vivian said, I am not going to tell you what to do, but I will tell you this. There is a version of this situation in which you spend the next 10 years bridging gaps, and then one day you look up and you have bridged yourself into a very small life. I have watched it happen to people I love. So whatever you decide, decide it like someone who knows what her yes is actually worth. I did not sleep much that night. I did not call my mother back the next day or the day after. On the third day, my mother texted, just checking in, sweetheart. On the fourth day, my father texted, which he almost never does, your mother is worried, please call when you can. On the fifth day, Naomi called. Mom says you're being weird, Naomi said. This is how she opens difficult conversations. No preamble, straight to the characterization. I'm not being weird, I said. I'm thinking. About what? She just needs help for a couple months. Naomi, I said. Do you know how much their home equity loan was for? Silence. Did you know they took a home equity loan? More silence. Do you know I paid $2,200 for your wedding florist out of my own pocket and still haven't been paid back? The silence this time was a different kind. That, she started. Mom said she was going to what? Nothing. Naomi, I am not angry at you about the florist. I'm not. But I need you to understand that what is being asked of me right now is not a small favor. They are asking me to take on a payment that resulted from a loan that was taken to pay for your wedding, that nobody told me about, while you are being protected from this information because they don't want it to be a burden on you. I paused. I am also someone's daughter. She didn't say anything for a long moment, then, I didn't know about the loan. I swear I didn't. I believe you, I said. What are you going to do? I'm going to do what I should have done a long time ago. I'm going to say no. My mother called 40 minutes later. The conversation was not pleasant. There were tears, genuine ones, I think, not performative. My mother does love me in the way people love the things they have always been able to rely on. She said she didn't understand where this was coming from. She said she thought we were a family. She said she had always tried to be fair. I listened. I did not argue with any of it. I said, Mom, I love you and I can't do this. She said, can't or won't, and I said both, and that was that. My father called an hour later, and it was shorter and harder, and he said some things I'm going to let sit for a while before I decide what to do with them. He used the phrase, your responsibility to this family, and I wrote it down on a piece of paper afterward, just to look at it in the light. What he never knew, what none of them knew, because I had not told them, was that I had spoken to Vivienne 2 more times in the days before. I had told her I was going to say no, and Vivienne, who had been thinking for days, said, while you're at it, I'd like to make a call. I asked her what kind of call. She said, I've been doing my son's family a disservice for years by staying out of things. That's going to change. Vivienne had money. She had spent decades living modestly, which people in my family had always interpreted as meaning she did not have much. She had investments. She had the house in Asheville, which she owned outright. She had, as I would later learn, maintained a quiet and careful financial life that had compounded quietly and carefully for decades. She also had a lawyer. His name isn't important, but he had been her lawyer for 22 years, and she trusted him the way you trust someone who has never once tried to make himself necessary to you. She called my father. I was not on that call. I found out about it afterward from Vivienne, who told me about it in the careful way she tells me things. Just the facts with a little space around each one. She told my father that she had been watching the pattern in our family for many years. She told him she was aware of the home equity loan, which she was not, but she said it with such certainty that my father apparently did not question it. She told him that she was aware that I had been subsidizing the family's choices for years without recognition or reimbursement, and that she found this unacceptable. She told him that going forward, she would be formally seizing her at pleading in a way that reflected actual contributions to the family. She did not threaten, she just stated. My father called me that night. His tone was different, not warm exactly. My father has never been a warm man, but measured. He said he hadn't realized how things had looked from my perspective. He said he and my mother had been so focused on keeping things smooth for everyone that they hadn't thought carefully about whether smooth for everyone meant the same thing for everyone. He used the word equitable, which I do not think I have ever heard him say before. He said he wanted to pay me back for the florist. I said okay. The check arrived 9 days later. It had my name spelled correctly. Naomi called me 3 weeks after that. She asked if she could visit me in Columbus for a weekend, just us. I said yes, and I meant it, because whatever was happening between me and my parents, Naomi had not known about the loan, and that matters to me. She came in July and we ate Thai food and walked around the short north and didn't talk about any of it for most of Saturday, and then on Saturday night she said quietly, I've been thinking about what you said, that you're also someone's daughter. I nodded. I think I've always kind of let you be the one who takes care of things, she said, because you're good at it. And that was lazy of me, and I'm sorry. That is the most accountable thing my sister has said to me in 28 years of being alive together, and I want to be clear. It was enough. It was genuinely enough. My parents and I are in a careful period. My father has been paying me back in increments, which I did not expect. My mother calls on Sundays now instead of only when something needs fixing. It's not repaired. I don't know if it will be fully. But it is different, and different for right now is what I have. Vivian still calls every Sunday, same as always. Last week she asked me how things were going, and I said honestly, I think they're going okay. She said, good, you should know. I would have done it regardless, made that call, whether you said no or not. I asked her why she waited until now. She said, because it wasn't my situation to fix until you decided it was, and then it was. I have the honey jar from the wedding on my kitchen counter, wildflower honey. Every time I see it, I think about standing at that counter in Savannah opening the invitation with my name spelled wrong, laughing because I didn't know yet what to do with any of it. I know now.